This program was made possible in part by a grant from Florida Public Broadcasting Service, Incorporated.
Life is what happens to you while you're making other plans.
He's been described as the greatest American humorist since Will Rogers. St. Augustine's good old boy is popular guitarist and storyteller Gamble Rogers. Hello and welcome to Southern Circuit. I'm Rickley Stone. This week's journey begins in our nation's oldest city, where Gamble Rogers spins his tall tales in what he calls Southern Gothic art songs. Tallahassee's Richard Baldwin is a two-time Mr. America. No easy feat, but pumping and pressing weights aren't Richard's only challenges. Wakulla County is the worm capital of the world, and the home of one family that for generations has grunted the wigglers from the earth to make a living. Bill France is the father of stock car racing in Daytona Beach. The NASCAR founder takes us from racing's early days on the beach to the super speedway of today. We'll meet the legendary Bill France when we take to the road on this week's Southern Circuit Journey. Stay with us.
Sisyphus was an ancient fellow who lived in the time of BC, back when a life curse carried some weight, because you live forever in BC. Now, Sisyphus had to push a boulder up to the top of a mountain. He'd get the boulder all the way up there to the top, and it would roll back down again. He'd go all the way back, start up, roll that boulder all the way up to the top of the mountain. He'd come right back. He spent eternity dealing with that big round rock. Agamemnon explained to me that's where those distinctions come in. Pushing the rock up the mountain, he said, that's the work ethic. The Protestant work ethic is when you get to enjoying it.
He calls himself a modern-day troubadour. Others have described him as the best American humorist since Will Rogers, and a storyteller from the Front Porch School of Mark Twain. In truth, Gamble Rogers is a good old boy from St. Augustine, whose talents find expression spinning yarns and singing Southern Gothic art songs.
One of the things that I had to do, or learn to do, was to talk and play at the same time. And well, there are a couple of reasons I did this. I came by it naturally in a sense because I decided finally that if the guitar went out of tune, then I wouldn't stop anything I was doing to set it right. So I began to tune while I was talking or playing. Because you can always plan your stops and do this kind of thing. But then when I started doing all the stories, I loved the guitar so much that I could see that half of the show was going to the stories, and so I simply resolved that I would keep the guitar in there and play my arrangements while I was talking. Just recently, I've I've been given to savor the rich and auspicious honor of being named the Troubadour Emeritus of all Ocklawaha County, Florida. This by virtue of having performed for 20 consecutive years as the house performer at the Terminal Tavern in Snipes Ford, without sustaining permanent disfigurement. I've been playing music for 35 years, but I've been telling stories longer even than that. And I came by storytelling naturally as a child in North Georgia around a big dinner table. Sometimes we had as many as 24 family members around the table at once. But a lot of the stories I tell on stage involve people that I grew up with, or things that happened to me as a child. Occasionally things that I read about in the newspaper that have story value. Storytelling, after all, is basically raising the literal to the apocryphal. Starting with what is true and trying to get something out of it which is not only entertaining but instructive. Now, don't you know, when we were youngsters growing up in Ocklawaha County, that certain blue chip element always would say to us, for God's sake, don't go down to the Terminal Tavern. But we went anyhow. Just to hear the music, you got to understand. Specifically, I began to use storytelling as a technique or a means of expression in the middle to late 60s, after I'd come back from New York City, where I'd been a member of the Serendipity Singers. Now, being a member of that singing group taught me that a formal stage show has a lot of merits. That is, that what goes on between each song is just as important, perhaps, as the songs themselves. You have to have continuity, and every show is a continuum, and it has to flow. And you don't need extraneous material such as a lot of tuning. Stories, I think, to touch people have to touch us first. And a storyteller is a little bit like a lightning rod, and I think to involve people in your stories, you have to involve yourself with stories of the human heart.
It was 1902 when the first stock car race was held on the shores of Ormond Beach, just north of Daytona. Since that time, stock car racing and Daytona Beach have become almost synonymous terms, largely through the efforts of a former garage mechanic by the name of Bill France Sr.
History would record that, in a sense, that he created a sport. He took motorsports, stock car racing in particular, which you might say was his specialty, and took it from an unorganized, just total chaos. And he took the sport and put it on a business basis, created respectability for the sport. The drivers have become heroes in their own rights. The sport's recognized by the news media, the national television networks, New York Times, all the newspapers around as a bona fide sport, and I think you have to pass the credit back to Bill France Sr.
His involvement with racing as anything more than a driver came about quite by accident, when he was asked by city officials to find a promoter for the annual race.
I did call a fellow named Ralph Hankinson, but I called him collect and he wouldn't accept the charge. So I was telling the story to a friend of mine named Charlie Reese, who had the best restaurant in town, was one of my customers, and he says, "You know how to put the race on?" I said, "Yeah, but I don't have any dough." He says, "Well, let's both of us put it on." He says, "I'll bankroll it and we'll go partners." So we raced on the beach until construction down there forced us to move down to the south end of the course on the beach. When I moved it down there, well, I pointed out to the local people here in Daytona that were Chamber of Commerce and city and county officials that the days were numbered of how long you could continue operating the beach road course. So we needed to build a facility.
He was always looking beyond today, what something could be and should be tomorrow. And you know, a builder, when he hit a mountain, he went right over the top. Sometimes he'd bore right on through, if that was a better way. Building the Daytona Speedway was a perfect example, where one blind alley after another blind alley, and no financing. Finally got some financing, wasn't enough, but took the project on anyway. And what you see out here today, which draws the largest crowds in the Southeast, the Daytona 500, is a tribute to that, the results of his efforts.
You can't build a big facility like this without taking a little gamble. So it gives me some satisfaction to look back and say, well, I'm glad we did it. It's done a lot for the community here, I think. It primes everybody's pump during race periods. And the people that come down during race periods like to come back again, you know.
I think economically, you can't begin to put a dollar figure on it. What, the President of the United States here on July 4th, the birthday of this country, plus the motels, the restaurants, the many people who come for the races, it's just hard to say, is it 100 million, is it 200 million? It's a city that we have had the vice president, the president visit because of Bill France Sr. The president, is kind of getting up in age himself, and I think that he looked at Bill France, who's a legend to this community, who built this speedway from a gas station on Main Street, and that's where he started, with nothing at all, and he built this place for Daytona Beach.
Of all of his accomplishments, perhaps the one he's proudest of is the founding of the National Association of Stock Car Auto Racing, or NASCAR as it's known.
I raced in a couple of stock car races, but there was no organization to them, no real rules or anything. This was before I ever started NASCAR. By getting NASCAR started, I'm making rules and regulations that one of them is we feel like we have improved the safety of the sport considerably. And also we've opened the door for many contestants to compete that wouldn't have the finances to compete with a special built car that would be like running at Indianapolis. So we've got, I think it must have had some place for it, otherwise it wouldn't have worked.
No, that's not the snore of a sleeping swamp monster. It's an age-old method of gathering fish bait called worm grunting. And for many rural Wakulla County folks like Jesse Ransom and his family, it's part of a way of life.
What is it that brings them up?
Well, the vibration is from the iron starboard jaws the ground, and the vibration of the iron starboard just makes them come up by joining, a slight joint to the ground.
Does it startle them or what?
Something like tickling them, and it just wiggles right up with the rubbing. Just like this one right here, just coming up by the iron stalk. So just coming out the ground. By just the joy of it.
How did you come up with this method of getting them up out of the ground?
Well, I guess it came from years back when most of them used to cut cross ties and stuff like that. And they didn't have no really iron stump. They mostly see old dead stump. They take the back of the axe and rub across it and just make a funny noise, and they came up. And then eventually they started using an axe and a stick. Then we used to find old railroad iron and started from it. The long railroad iron, then they started getting heavy irons and bigger stars, and it's been going on and on.
Where did you learn about worm gunting?
Well, in Wakulla County. Well, I started when I was real young, about 4 or 5. And I've been doing it ever since I was a little something, just could see how to get on the ground. It's a lot of hard work in it. Sometimes it can be easy. Like now, it's rough because they don't come up that good on account of the weather change and all that rain. You have to have a bait permit to get them. And they cost you $30 for each person for a year. You have to have these permits. They change them every year. You have to pay $30 in order to get them. And if you caught without them, it's a fine.
Do they come out here often and ask you for your...
Yes. They like ride by the road to see vehicle parked out here. They comes and check and see, do you have a permit to get them. They wouldn't have did this, I don't guess, hadn't it been for Charles Corral. Thanks to him, he came and put us all on TV, and they started getting us from there to go buy permits and everything. During the time we was getting them, it didn't cost you nothing. Just go out and just get all you want anywhere you go on the bait.
What do you do with them after you've gotten them?
Well, we take them and sell them to the people that buys them, who carries them off to ship them or whatever they do with them. If the price is right, everybody just quit what they're doing and go in the woods baiting. It have been high as $22 this year. And I knocked off on my job at the crab plant and went baiting. And $22 a can, and I go out there and get me 5 or 6 cans in about an hour and a half. I come on back to the house and go back to work. Before 8:30 to 9 o'clock, we made $107. Easy. But the way it is now, you can't do it.
He's been Mr. Florida, Mr. Texas, Mr. Northern Hemisphere. He's been training for 15 years.
Terrific upper body development, Lisa, but I understand the judges look very, very closely at the legs when they're scoring the competitors.
Right, that's what really makes the difference between a professional and someone who's just working out in a gym. It's realizing the need for development and symmetry in the overall body.
Richard Baldwin. Number 1 in the middleweight class.
And in this case, I'd say that Superman is an appropriate theme.
It takes a lot of hard work, dedication, and in Richard Baldwin's case, pure sweat to be the very best at what he does.
Some people want to see how high they can climb a mountain, or some people want to see how fast they can run or how far they can run in how short a time. For some reason, I just wanted to see how well developed I could get my body.
Not many would argue the point that he's done a good job developing his body, at least not to his face. Two-time winner of the Mr. America title and numerous other competitions, Richard is once again back in training, with hopes of one day winning the coveted Mr. Universe title.
When you're training for a world title and every country is sending the best people they have, it's kind of just boggles your mind. You know, you start getting paranoid, you start saying, what is that guy over in Czechoslovakia doing right now that I'm not doing, you know? And you want to make sure that everything you do contributes to winning that thing, you know? And I've come in second in the Mr. Universe twice. Basically, I just train once a day for about an hour and a half. Now that continues up until the last 3 months. The last 3 months, I'll train 3 times a day. And it's a long process of getting your diet right and your body in shape enough so you can handle the stress of training. You know, people may say, well, he only trains an hour and a half, you know, but that hour and a half wears you to a frazzle if you're training hard enough, because your body can't take that intense weight training much longer than that unless you're really in really good shape, and it takes a while to do that. The rough thing about bodybuilding isn't so much the training, you know, it's that combination of dieting with the training. It's rough. But the other thing about it is that it's not just the training and the dieting either. It's you have to spend time sunning, you have to spend time working on presentation, and those take up a lot of time, you know, trying to learn how to present yourself well on stage so that you hide your weak points and magnify your strong points. And it's like trying to be you know, an artist at the same time as an athlete, and it takes a lot of time. And so that cuts out all sorts, and the diet and the training and all this other stuff cut out almost all your social life. You can't go anywhere, you can't eat anything anybody else. If your wife or girlfriend wanted to go out to eat, say, I can't do it, I can't eat that. You know, all I can eat is this, this, and this.
As all-consuming as the training and dieting might be, he still manages the day-to-day operations of the gym he opened in Tallahassee, Baldwin's Body Forum.
When I opened that place over there, where there were only, I think, 2 spas, one massage place that had some equipment in it, and then my place. Now there's over 17 exercise facilities in town, with 2 or 3 more in the works. So, you know, there's the interest. People have really discovered weight training. I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger and ABC Wide World of Sports and different programs have made the general public more aware of the benefits of weight training, and that you don't become muscle-bound or lame-brained or whatever. And so, so they've actually tried it, and as more people try it, you know, their friends see them getting good results, and so it's expanded considerably. This is it right here.
Richard earned 2 master's degrees, one in theology and the other in the classics, while participating in the least favorite part of his training.
When you're on stage and those lights are on you, you have to be dark enough to absorb the light so that it doesn't make your, it'll wash you out if you don't. You know, that white reflection just washes all the definition you've worked out hard for. Whereas if you're dark, it'll absorb the light, and you can actually see all the striations and definition that you trained down for. When I'm playing Mozart or whatever, and I'm concentrating on the dynamics or trying to improve my tone or whatever, it's sort of, I can't think of all this other stuff. I can't think about business and everything else at the same time. But and so that helps a lot. When I think about the whole thing, I see guys that train and diet just as hard as I do, and they never win anything. It's a gift, you know. So if I've got anybody to thank, it's not myself, it's God that you know, as far as I'm concerned, because I was just born with the ability to be good at this, and I just happened to develop it.
That's Southern Circuit for this week. Thank you for being with us. Be sure and join us again next week when Southern Circuit journeys to Delray Beach to visit one of Florida's lesser-known treasures, the Murakami Museum of Japanese Culture. We'll also make stops in Pensacola, Tuareg, and Gainesville. We hope to see you then. Have a good week.